What's going on, man?
Not too much. How are you? It's been a long couple of days for me, like a long, exciting but tiring couple of days.
Well, we've been going back and forth a lot via text and had some calls as well. But this is a quick episode to get your reactions on the first half or first couple of days of GDC.
Yeah.
So let's jump in. Thank you guys for tuning in. I guess I didn't really start the episode the way we normally do, but this is Zane from Everything Vibe. I'm with Ronnie. Ronnie, how you doing?
Yeah, and doing well. Like I said, don't want to repeat myself too much. I know
No.
I tend to start these episodes the same way every time, anyways. But
No,
yeah.
Totally fair. That was my bad. Okay, so let's change it up and jump right in. So, what would you say? I know there are a couple things that we're gonna go through, but let's just look at a high level from a complete newbie like myself. And actually, this was your first time going to a major conference like this. Was there anything that so far has really just like stuck out to you? Have you been like overwhelmed? Has it been easy to navigate? I'm just curious, like, what has your experience been so far the first time going to a major conference like this?
Well, I mean, as far as I feel like most of the feeling of being overwhelmed just had to do with, trying to schedule as much coming into the show as possible. Obviously, there's a lot going on at GDC itself, but then there's also a lot of developers here that are showing games kind of behind closed doors. And having being able to kind of get all that stuff set up in advance, and then knowing that you're here to not only try to see as much at the show as you can, but then meet with everybody and kind of have everything planned. It's just like, it's a lot to prepare for, right? And I can only imagine what it's like for a lot of the developers here, because they're meeting with countless numbers of people, sometimes, hour by hour in the day. So it can be long in that way. But so I just did, quite a bit of prep to make sure I had, a lot of cool people to meet and interviews to do while I was here, and had as much of that lined up in advance as possible. And then came here and, got, finished the registration process and everything, picked up my badge, and then it was off to the races. So all that stuff was fairly, easy. I know, like, as far as lines and all that stuff was concerned, there are tons of people at this conference. So depending on when you come to register, like if anybody out there is listening that hasn't been to GDC or similar conferences, plan accordingly and kind of try to decide when you want to, go and take care of that. Like here at GDC, if you were able to, you could even come on Sunday before the conference officially started on Monday and get some of that stuff taken care of. But yeah, as far as for us, it wasn't a problem. Got everything taken care of, and then
cool. As you'd hope, there shouldn't be any major issues.
But... Oh no, and I mean everybody. I mean you almost can't venture out of a major area at the conference center without running into several people that are working for either the center or the conference directly, and everybody is really helpful, and they all know most of the major places that they need to direct you to and all that.
Gotcha. Well, so, let's get into like the content now. Like, so you've been there for 2 days. I know that these 2 days specifically were VRDC, although you have a lot of cool stuff that you'll be checking out with some of the companies over the next couple of days. But I mean, what have you mainly hit? Has it been panels, sessions? Are you checking out game demos? I'm just curious, like, what your day-to-day has kind of looked like. And I'm sure it's very wide-ranging, but maybe if you can like condense it down for the listeners.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm kind of. I've been taking notes on all the sessions I've been to, and I'll have to find out after the show's over, because I want to say most of the sessions are publicly available streaming, or at least some of them are, because I know in the past I've kind of watched some of those sessions from GDC, even though I wasn't attending. So for those interested, I mean, you might want to try looking up some of these sessions that I'm going to mention. But yeah, like, I mean, basically my time has been spent going to sessions, and then in between sessions trying to either see folks that have booths set up, and there are limited numbers of booths right now, but I'll get into that in a second. So either try to find a booth or somebody that's showing something off, and see if I can try some stuff that way. Or then, on the flip side, if I have something actually scheduled, I leave the sessions and, prep, and then go and talk to the people that I've set up the schedule with. So as far as the sessions are concerned, I mean, every day so far, the sessions have pretty much been going on constantly from 10 a.m. or so up until about 6 p.m. And the first 2 days are pretty much all focused on virtual reality and AR as well. And then there are other kind of more possibly technical, I guess, routes. Some of these sessions are also very technical, but I want to say there's like kind of a Unity track that people can attend sessions on, and I think there was like a Microsoft one and a Google one. Like there's kind of various different types of sessions that are being available depending on why you're here and what you're trying to learn. Most of this is the Game Developers Conference, so it really isn't, it's not open to the public. It's not really any kind of a promotional or marketing type of a conference. So it is all about trying to teach people, people that are working on games, trying to
it's more like technical focused, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's all about collaboration and trying to inform the rest of their set of peers kind of what they've been up to and what's going on with the kind of work that they're doing, and discuss different kinds of topics that are just more general. So
for someone like, I mean, you're obviously more technical than I am, but I would say that both of us don't really fall under the quote unquote like technical blanket in terms of developing and understanding like VR from that aspect. Have you still gotten a lot of benefit from those panels? Is it
for sure? Because you have to remember, I mean, games aren't all about just coding. So
True.
I'd say there's like a mix of, I mean, there's definitely a lot of sessions that are more technical in that regard. But there's a lot of sessions that have talked about more general design challenges, narrative challenges, all these kind of things, in particular relating to VR, and also, people just talking about, what it was like working on X game that they developed and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, no, in most of the sessions that I've kind of chosen to go to are ones that, this seems like it would be very interesting to me, and then I go that way.
Gotcha. Have you come across anything that is just like focused on like the future of VR from like a bird's eye view that really like caught your eye? Or I'm just curious, like if you learned anything there about like VR, the industry. I feel like I'm sure you've heard like a bunch of stuff, but I'm wondering if there's anything that kind of stands out that you were like, didn't really think about it that way, or wow, I did not realize like such and such was here already, or like the tech was this close to being finished or finalized type of thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, in regards to like future tech, probably not. I mean, there were some announcements that I wasn't in those particular sessions, but I could have been. There were some sessions that just kind of generally covered kind of new advances in like GPU technology. Real-time ray tracing was something that NVIDIA and then later AMD, I think, both kind of talked about. So that those were kind of new things that were coming out of some of these talks. But like as far as like, what new tech in VR specifically, not so much. I think still, like one of the things I guess a major takeaway, as far as like something that I kind of took away from a lot of the sessions was just how important design work is and creativity is and all of that side on the software side of things, to solving a lot of the VR problems. So, I mean, we all obviously know that the headsets could be higher resolution, and stuff like inside out tracking could be better, and certainly all of the major players, the VR hardware side of things are working diligently on a lot of that.
I mean, that's on its way, which is, I think, the exciting part, right? Like, a lot of that stuff, we know it's just a matter of time for the tech to mature enough, and for whatever the case is. And I know I'm speaking completely ignorantly about the topic, since I'm not like, I don't know the technical side, but just knowing technology and how rapidly it evolves, like, I mean, if people are talking about that already, it's only a matter of time before it's like at scale and in, the home consumer version. So,
sure.
and like you said, to your point, like, a lot of, we already know that a lot of these major players are working on it. So I was just curious if you'd come across anything that kind of like blew you away while you were there.
Yeah, no, I mean the big takeaways, I would say, like, a lot of the focus on kind of, on further developing VR has to do with, I think, kind of resetting your mind as far as if you're a developer that has approached game development from a more traditional sense, and now are working in VR, or like VR is kind of new to everyone, including the people that are developing the VR titles that we have played and loved, right?
Yeah.
So like, they're like these kind of problems that are unique to VR. They're new problems that these developers are running into as well. So it's kind of like, sometimes you have to kind of step back and kind of start from square one, even though you may have worked on games in the past. Kind of keeping an open mind, trying things that is sometimes, like, methods that have been used previously will work. Other times they won't. And it's kind of one of those, there's so much trial and error and so much work, I think, being done on behalf of all of these different developers that are being represented here to, like, figure out what's best for VR. And those are some of the most interesting topics, I'd say.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, one in particular that kind of left a strong impression on me earlier today was a session that I attended on today. It's Tuesday. For anyone.
Oh yeah, good call.
Tuesday, March
20th.
20th.
Yep.
For anybody kind of listening to this after the fact and interested in, if any of these are end up being posted, I'd recommend trying to go and listen to the talk that was given by a couple of gentlemen from Criterion. They were some of the team members behind. It's called, off the top of my head, it was free DLC that was released with Battlefront 2. It was called Rogue One X-Wing VR Mission, I believe. It was, unfortunately, it was only released on the PlayStation VR. It hasn't been released on other platforms yet. But the talk they gave today was very, very inspiring, because they talked from beginning to end about kind of how important it was to design VR around the emotions or feelings that you get from the experience, rather than just, like, more technical milestones that you might think are being targeted. So, like, throughout their development of this, I mean, they were basically trying to make an experience where you could live out your fantasy of being in an X-Wing, and basically being in a Star Wars movie that you have been watching for decades.
True, yeah.
And so the way they approach that problem, and they even, like, during their dailies, they would go back to this board, and, like, all of their goals in getting further along in the project were all set on, like, how is the work that I'm doing as a developer going to allow us to create this emotional, like, beat within the story and within the so that the players are experiencing and feeling what we want them to feel. So, like what is it about that, about using the targeting computer, in the original Star Wars, that like what is it that's cool about that moment, and how can we make someone experiencing that in VR actually feel like they're there, all those kind of things.
Gotcha.
And it was really, really interesting to hear about their approach to that. Also, another funny example, like fascinating example, really, that they gave was like in problem solving, and kind of a unique way of looking at some of the problems that developers face in VR with comfort, for example, was how they dealt with issues relating to a flyover of a Star Destroyer. So everybody that like is familiar with Star Wars is undoubtedly like familiar with that initial opening scene on the first Star Wars movie, where you see this little ship, and then all of a sudden that ship is completely dwarfed in the shadow of this massive Imperial Star Destroyer, right? And it flies overhead, and it continues to fly and fly and fly, and you're just like, wow, this is like, that scene has such scale and an immense, it's a very powerful moment, right? So when they were developing this VR experience, they wanted to bring that to life. They wanted you to actually live out that feeling of being dwarfed by a Star Destroyer overhead.
Wow! Instead of just like seeing it on a screen, you're there.
That's really exactly. Cool. So some of the challenges that they were talking about, like number one, like it's pretty easy on screen to exactly where the camera is, where the viewer is going to be looking at it from. So you don't have to worry about them like looking all around and all of that. You can pass it overhead. So how do we like in VR, where someone can be looking anywhere, how do we surprise them with this Star Destroyer coming out of nowhere and like engulfing their vision and all that stuff? And so they have to use a lot of misdirects. They have to like kind of trick the player into making sure that they're looking forward and focused on something, so that at the perfect time they can introduce that into the scene, and they can, in a sense, without actually controlling you, kind of control you into doing what they want you to do.
What they want you to experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which now you just ruined the surprise for everyone. Thanks, Ronnie.
I know. But
no, that sounds really cool, actually.
Yeah, and then so they were able to get some of that stuff, right? Like they were able to get you to look in the right place, so that you were surprised by this huge thing that otherwise, if you were, looking behind you or whatever, like you wouldn't be getting that angle, you wouldn't be getting that same feeling, right? But after they did that, one of the things that they started realizing was that people were getting super disoriented because this huge object above you was moving. They would actually feel like the object wasn't moving, they were moving, because like you've experienced this kind of sometimes when there's too much movement in VR, or like you get that weird feeling of motion sickness because like the environment around you is doing something different than you are. So they started noticing like people felt like people were getting confused. They sometimes felt like they were the ones moving rather than the ship going over them, or sometimes they would look up at the Star Destroyer coming, and that would cause them to steer into the Star Destroyer and immediately blow up. Like all these kind of things. That and you would think that the answer to those problems was more technical in nature, like, oh, we need to, adjust player movement, or we need to do this, or we need to do that. And literally what they ended up, after lots of testing, what they found to be the most effective way and solved all the problems with those issues is literally giving the player context. So they didn't have to change anything. Literally all they had to do was tell the player, like, you're stuck in a tractor beam. Like, oh no, like we're stuck in a tractor beam. We can't move.
Gotcha.
And as soon as they told you that, without changing anything about the encounter, no one felt like they were the ones moving anymore. They always immediately could tell that the Star Destroyer was the thing that was moving, and they no longer felt sick. They no longer, and so that actually leads to like a major, I guess, theme that was anticipation. Like in terms of
preparing you, like your mental perspective or something like that.
Yeah, right? and in VR in general, anticipation has a lot to do with how comfortable and how well experiences tend to work, because by preparing the player in a lot of ways, even if it's just like literally telling you something, all of a sudden that what happens on screen no longer has any kind of a disorienting effect on you. So like there was like a lot of these kind of like little weird things that they learned along the way, and it was just it was a really cool talk. So I mean, there were a lot of other cool talks too, but that was one that I listened to, stood out a bit.
Cool. Well, I mean, this was just meant to be like a quick debrief, because I know you're a little pressed for time, but I think there was one thing that you had mentioned beforehand, a game or an experience that you got to try that you wanted to chat about while it was still fresh in your mind.
Yeah. Actually, So, I've been meeting with a lot of developers, like I mentioned. One of the teams that I met with today were the folks over at Third Eye Studios, and they're a VR developer that's based out of Finland, and they were here, behind closed doors, showing off Downward Spiral Horror Station, which is a game that I don't believe they have an announcement as far as like when it's going to be released, when the full version of the game is going to be released. But there is a prologue that they released a year ago that everyone should definitely check out if you haven't already. That's available on Steam. But yeah, they gave me the opportunity to sit down and really try a small portion of Horror Station today, and then I did get a chance to do an interview with them. Unfortunately, it didn't record. So
yeah, I know.
We're gonna set up a time where we're able to meet back up with them and talk about the game, because their story. The story behind their studios is actually really, really fascinating. It's not your typical run-of-the-mill story when it comes to VR developers. So I want to save that for another day.
No, I want to be in that conversation, because I was jealous. You were talking about how awesome it was, so I want to be there for the next conversation.
No, it was super, super cool. So that's what. So we will be in touch with them. They're awesome guys, and in general, the work that their studio is doing is really incredible, because I really had a blast playing Downward Spiral Horror Station today. I guess some of the main kind of takeaways of my experience, the best way to describe the game is kind of like a mix between it harkens back to kind of classic sci-fi thrillers, sci-fi horror thrillers, maybe I would say, like 2001: A Space Odyssey. References to like Alien, Prometheus, those types of movies, and it even kind of connects. It has references to more modern space films like Gravity, for example. You're in a zero gravity environment. You're in a space station that is derelict. It's no longer functioning, and you don't really. Nothing about the game kind of tells you the context outright. They don't want to use any kind of dialogue or kind of, like unrealistic or unnatural ways of telling their story. They want you to be in the environment and to kind of figure things out on your own. And just by way of tone and feel and immersion in the environment, you learn the story that way. And those are a lot of buzzwords that I know a lot of people are kind of throwing out here and there, and all kinds of different VR experiences. But really, Downward Spiral really, really does make good on that promise, because quickly after getting to the game and exploring, you do start getting the sense of that you're in this real place. The way the visuals and particularly the audio design works. It really does a good job of making you feel like everything around you is tactile and real, and depending on where you go, whether it be a small hallway, a larger room within the space station, or even at one point, during the brief time I spent with the game, going outside of the space station and being in outer space. All of those things had, the sound design was key in kind of making you feel all of those things rather than just simply being told them. And really, like the sound design, from just the way the audio works to the score in the background to like distortion when you're out in space, like all of it just really made you feel like you were actually really there.
Gotcha.
And the other thing that I thought was particularly cool was how they deal with locomotion, because we all know that that's kind of often a big hurdle.
It's a hot topic. Let's just say.
Yeah, especially in making these kind of more open worldish type environments where you can traverse long distances. How are you going to do that, and how are you going to make it not only be comfortable but feel realistic and not break any kind of sense of where you are? And really their solution is one of the best ones I've seen, because it includes more than one way of moving into one kind of basic, like it gives you multiple tools at once in order to make everything just work. And let me elaborate on that a little bit. So the first way that you can get around, because it is a 0G environment, is like we've seen in games like Lone Echo and some others, though they've been working on this for quite a while. So that's not to diminish the work they're doing in any way. You can push off of the environment, like push off of a surface and move that way using momentum. So that's one way of moving. The other way of moving is you can use a magnet gun, and basically it's I'm trying to think, it's like a magnet tether gun, more or less. I don't know if that's exactly what they call it, but off the top of my head. But essentially you're shooting basically a metal tether that latches onto a surface and then pulls you towards that surface. And at least at the beginning, that can be slow. But later on in the game, I think there are going to be different ways that you can speed up the process of kind of propelling yourself forward and pulling different objects. So like what I noticed, what's so cool about using both of these techniques, like you see games that give you different options, right? Like there's a lot of games out there that you can go into a menu and decide whether you want full locomotion moving a joystick or you want teleportation, but it's kind of hard to use both. In this game, first of all, there's none of the options are take you out of the experience. They're all realistic given the context of where you are. But then, more importantly, there's no disconnect in terms of like having to fight menu systems in order to go from one to the other. Literally, you can have the magnetic tether gun in one hand, and you can have your other hand free, and you can be pushing off of objects to push you in one direction. And then when you're moving in space, if you need to kind of get a quick redirect, you can shoot out your tether and pull you in a different direction as well. And so I noticed when I was playing, it was kind of the perfect balance, because there would be some times where, I don't want to use a tether here. It would feel awkward. And all of a sudden I'm naturally just switching to pushing off of things and back and forth and back and forth. And just, using both of those in tandem to move around the environment was just, it felt like that's how it should work. And I never felt like sometimes when I'm using, most of the time, honestly, for me personally, using a joystick to move around an environment with normal, like full locomotion, is a little bit immersion breaking, in the sense that I can tell that, I'm not, in real life, you don't move around an environment by moving a stick.
Yeah. Nor teleporting.
Nor teleporting.
Yeah.
Exactly. But in this world, being in a space station, or this environment, I should say, it felt like everything was the way you would be doing it, within that context. So I just, yeah, it really like because the movement system worked so well, and because it did it in a way that you know that was so credible, given the context of the environment and everything. I really felt like I was in that place, and anytime you play a game where you get that true sense of presence, where you feel like you've been taken out of your living room and into a new world, like those are the best kinds of experiences.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't want to get into any more. I mean, it was a lot of fun, and I wish I had the recording to kind of back me up on that. But we'll be in touch with those guys, and like I said, we'll try to get something recorded here sooner rather than later to
Gotcha.
to let them tell their story more.
Sounds good, man. I'm looking forward to it. I will look for the prologue and make sure I check that out and see if I can link it up in Steam. But
okay,
yeah, man, this is exciting. I'm seeing your updates every day has been a lot of fun. So living vicariously through you, hopefully the listeners are too. But yeah, man, just keep soaking it all in, and we'll check in with you in a couple days, and yeah, go from there.
Okay, sounds great. So all right, we'll keep everybody updated, and until then, yeah, all the best.
All right, take care, man. Talk soon. Bye.